I traveled almost 8,000 miles to Kunming, China to eat bugs, play dress up in a stone forest, and see China's eternal spring city. So it's about 3 a.m. when we land, and I cannot believe that we have made it to China. And not only that, but we are in Yunnan, the southwestern province of China, specifically in the city of Kunming. I don't think I ever would have believed that I would come here, and I had only heard about it in stories growing up. So given that it is about 3 a.m., the first important step is getting some sleep. But of course, when I see a hotel room for the first time, I gotta give you a hotel tour. And man, was this a magnificent hotel room that was quite big for my mom and I. So we're staying at the Wyndham Grand, and for context, the reason why we are in Kunming in the first place is because my mom was invited to be a speaker at their conference. Go mom, always killing it. And because of that, I am extra grateful because that means she was allowed to bring A+1, and when she chatted us in the family group chat who wants to go to China, without hesitation, I hit reply, and I knew that I was in for the trip of a lifetime, which I am happy to admit means very fancy bathrooms when your mom is the guest speaker and the conference is trying to schmooze my mom up. After a very sweaty 8-hour layover in Singapore, thanks to everyone who's watched that video, and then a 2 to 3 hour flight to China, I am pooped. So it is time to say officially goodnight. Well, hello, Kunming. So it has been almost 10 years since I've been back to China. Yes, I am Chinese, but I don't have a big part of my family that actually lives in China, so we don't go back too frequently. But something I do remember about my times when I visited as a kid is you've got everything you could want in a breakfast, from Chinese specialties like buns to even savory noodles, all the way to your American classics like bacon and eggs. Like, it is pure choice paralysis, and it is very difficult for me to not fill up my plate completely and then just like stuff myself for the entire day. But we are in China, so I know I'm about to eat a lot of good things the rest of the trip. Morning, Mom. Okay, day one breakfast. This is very thrilling, and I kind of ate for like 2 people. Like I said, it was very hard to decide. We got protein with eggs, but then I also gotta get like congee with spicy pork, matcha bread with taro paste inside, fruit, dragon fruit included, of course. I'm in China, I can't get that in the US. Bacon, soy milk, scallion pancakes that reminded me of my grandma. And I will admit, I did go back for a second plate. We'll look at it on the plus side though, because it means that I am caloried up and ready to take on my first real day in Kunming, China. And as we take in the city views for the first time, some Kunming fun facts. So it is the largest city in the province of Yunnan, and just generally one of the most populous cities in southwestern China, with over 4.9 million residents. And it's only been like 30 minutes in the car, and I'm kind of already regretting eating such a big breakfast. But how could you not with a buffet like that? So we are by a beautiful river, and man, what a restaurant, because we are sat right up near the window for one of the first items on my Kunming food bucket list. Probably the most famous dish in Kunming. This, or literally translated in Mandarin, to guoqiao mi xian. Are you proud of my Mandarin pronunciation for any Mandarin speakers out there? But basically, it has a steaming hot, rich broth that's usually made from chicken, pork bones, sometimes duck or goose even. And then basically that's served separately from a tray of raw and lightly cooked ingredients, from thinly sliced meats to quail eggs, vegetables, bean curd sheets, fresh rice noodles. And a big part of Kunming is the city is called the Eternal Spring for many reasons, from their weather, but another aspect is that they eat a lot of fresh ingredients, but specifically flowers. And mixing it all together is just part of the experience of the dish. And the name and tradition of the dish comes from the Qing dynasty. It's a legend where there was a wife who brought her scholarly husband hot noodle soup across a bridge to where he was studying, and realized that a layer of chicken fat kept the broth hot during her journey over the bridge. I did not know that when I was eating it then, but I appreciate it even more now with a little legend. And this wasn't necessarily on purpose, but I had actually eaten this dish back in the US about like a week or 2 before coming on the trip, and I hadn't eaten it for the first time. I loved it then because I'm a big soup girl, but so getting to eat it in Kunming was even more fun because I could really compare it with what we had in the US and just appreciate how authentically exciting this experience was, because you know, when I go on a trip, the thing that I'm most excited about is the food. And even though we had a giant pot of steaming noodles, there were so many other appetizers that I got a chance to try. So there's a lot of goat's milk actually in the diet in Kunming, which is interesting, and I didn't necessarily expect it. They fry it, they kind of chill it. There are many different ways to eat it. So that was one of my first of many goat milk bites throughout the trip. There was stinky tofu, beef shanks with local herbs, and this like peanutty dessert situation. And it's pretty incredible that within a single meal, I've already eaten so many things that I've never tried before in the US. But something I have tried before and love is bingfen, which is the best way to end off a hot meal. It's basically cool, like herbal jelly with some sugar syrup. And here they had raisins and once again, more flowers. So check to a perfect first meal in Kunming. I've got that glowing, like cartoonish look in my eye because I really can't believe that we are here in China. And the first stop in this area for our little cultural tour, now that I'm full, is the Yunnan Military Academy, which was founded in 1909 and was one of the 3 major military academies in modern China. And it trained over 9,000 military leaders until it closed in 1935. So right now it is a free museum that you can kind of walk through and understand more of Chinese history. And while I will say military history is not necessarily the specific aspect of history that I have the most interest in, it was still quite interesting to see how they portray their museums and their own history in China compared to, say, the museums in the US. And then also seeing this like slice of their culture, which honestly you don't hear much about in the US, learning about Chinese militaries. And definitely in general, China is portrayed in a negative light in the US, which is a huge reason of why I wanted to even create this series showcasing my adventures, because China is such a beautiful, underrated place. Like, I don't gotta tell you, just look at this green lake and the pavilion. What a view. And speaking of the lake, I feel like I've been staring at it for so long while I was eating my crossing bridge rice noodles that I'm finally excited to get some steps in here. So we are at Sui Lake, also known as Green Lake Park. You saw the water is literally green. And it's surrounded by tea houses, restaurants, shops. It's a really like peaceful kind of spot in the middle of what is a popular city. And it has the perfect nickname as Jade of Kunming City. And then next, we are headed to Yuantong Temple, which is at the foot of Yuantong Hill in Kunming. So this is the oldest and most famous Buddhist temple in all of Yunnan Province, dating back to over 1,200 years. So what is very unique and cool about it is that instead of climbing upwards like you do at most temples, you actually walk down into the temple. And there is a mix of old school architecture with both Yuan and Ming dynasty styles, and just generally peaceful vibes. Like if you're coming to China or Asia, temples must be on your list. And one of the aspects that I found most interesting was actually seeing how the Thai influences of Buddhism show up here. So you'll see that this temple in the back looks a little bit different in terms of design, even though the lions look, because it has more of a Thai influence. And around the corner, all of a sudden, I see this like majestic lake, mountain, and bird perch looking at the fish. I felt like I was full in a Studio Ghibli or like animated movie of sorts, and I stared at the bird for like the next 10 minutes. And the fairy tale of a day only continues because next we are off to a food market, specifically like a farmer's market meets China, we'll call it that. And this is truly something out of a dream. I actually probably have dreamed of walking by hundreds of food vendors selling local items and just seeing what the produce looks like and munching on local dishes. Like, I was pinching myself so hard in this moment. And there are so many unique delicacies from, like I said, local produce, flowers, bugs, etc. are really big in this region, but then also dishes that I had just never seen before. So starting off with the fruit, there were these funnily molded little melon men, and then this berry that I had never tried before, but almost reminded me of a softer lychee in terms of the outside, and then just like a berry flavor in the middle. And then, of course, when in Asia, you get a giant coconut to sip on, and I had eaten this in Singapore literally the day before, but this one took it up another level. This one had so much more juice, so much more meat, but it was actually a workout. It was like very heavy and probably giving like 8 to 10 pounds. So it kind of worked out. We were very hot and thirsty, but then that we also wanted to just drink it quickly so we didn't have to hold it anymore. And if you thought I was exaggerating when I said hundreds of vendors, that was no joke, because every corner that you turn, the market keeps on going and there are more and more items, and it was popping. It was like a weekday, but there were so many people shopping around, and of course the vendors themselves. So a quick rundown of some top hits. We have pickled vegetables and chili, which is a popular way to essentially preserve and elongate the life of your produce. There was this moldy tofu, never seen anything like that in my life. Some might be geeked out, but I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of intrigued because it looked very soft and pillowy almost. I did not eat it, but next time I will try. And like I said, so much fresh produce. It was so beautiful, honestly, seeing all the colors from the flowers to some veggies that you probably recognize from the States. And I feel like as a kid, I never appreciated vegetables, but here, how could you not? And I loved also smelling all the flowers, and thankfully throughout my entire journey I'll actually get to eat some too. There are so many different varieties of tofu to dozens of mushrooms. I feel like any mushroom foragers out there, I know you are very jealous of what I'm looking at right now. And some felt like they were of another world, like these bright orange ones that if I saw in a forest, I'd probably back away from, because didn't they teach us in science class that when things are brighter and look a little bit more alluring, they're actually more toxic? Someone can back me up. And of course, walking through a food market like this is gonna get us hungry. So we saw these little corn bows that literally look like corn, but they're essentially buns. Very fragrant and exactly how you'd imagine they taste. Like if you're a corn lover, this is for you. And like I said, more beautifully colored produce. It really feels like it's out of a textbook. And I also feel like I was a Anthony Bourdain, like food travel blogger type person going through all of this. And that is literally my dream job, is to combine food and travel. So like I said, this was so similar to, and probably beyond any dream I could have even imagined. And you haven't even seen my favorite item, crispy hanging pork belly. Guys, just look at this. I am salivating. Oh gosh, like I'm really salivating. They cut this up for us, and each little cut, you could hear the crispy crunch. This was my favorite bite. I am a meat girl, so biased, but so good. I did get to try some chicken feet. Of course, if you're a dim sum goer, you'll know that chicken feet is a big part of Chinese cuisine. Not my favorite, but you gotta give it a try, especially when they're giving you samples on the street. There was more fried pork skin here, similar to a chicharron. And even as we're about to leave, I look at the last vendor and I'm like, how could I not get that? These are mung bean jelly noodles, which I actually love eating in the US. So to see it in China and with a little food cart, I was like, must get. Extra cilantro, please. Okay, I've just been eating all day long, but somehow after this we are headed to dinner. And special shout out to the chopsticks in China. So basically the reusable part is the top, but then the only disposable part they give you is the bottom of the chopstick. So you basically put both pieces together, and it's very smart, makes a lot of sense, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in the US. And like I said, my favorite bite, that crispy pork belly, I wanted so bad. And then we basically started off in the meantime, as we had ordered, just kind of eating a bunch of the items that we had gotten from the food vendors, so you'll see them here. And for context, we are at a Chinese Thai fusion restaurant. And something specific about this area of China, Southwest, specifically Yunnan, is that we're actually quite close to Thailand. So a lot of the influences of Thai cuisine kind of bleed over and blend with that of China, which is perfect for me. Thai cuisine is my favorite. And look, like I told you, we are eating flowers with our food. This was scrambled eggs with moli hua, or like molly flowers. So good, so fragrant. And okay, now we're getting to the final portion of the evening, watching the famous peacock dancers and the regional dance of Yunnan. I'm gonna be honest with you, I was starting to crash so hard at this dinner because now, jet lag, it's a 12-hour difference. We had just done an 8-hour layover in Singapore, and I was in and out of sleep during even the dinner and this performance. Hello, good morning. We are off to a solo day in KUNMING, which is crazy. My mom is off giving her presentation. She's killing it. Very grateful because of that. That is why I'm here in China. But first step, we got to eat breakfast so that we have enough energy to power me through the day, because I was pretty exhausted yesterday, but I tried to sleep from 11 to 8. So hopefully we have enough fuel in the tank. I'll see you when I'm eating. My outfit of the day was inspired by like a Kim Possible athletic vibe meets George of the Jungle nature. I don't know if that makes sense, but you tell me. Okay, like I said, back to breakfast, and it basically is a replica of what I ate the first day. Spicy pork congee and watermelon included. And a 12-hour time difference means my morning is a good time to call the US and catch up with my sister. FaceTiming her when it was like 9 p.m. nighttime her time made me feel less lonely during this breakfast. And an hour later, I have not really fully digested because all I did was sit in the car, but we are actually at lunch. And this is the first of multiple hot pots within the same day. Like, when does that happen? Hot pot is my favorite food, but I would never have expected to eat it multiple times. I also did not realize that hot pot is actually very popular in this area of China. Like, you'd think it's so hot they wouldn't want hot pot, but there's something very satisfying about the way you just sweat when you eat it. And a huge FYI, if for when you're visiting China, a lot of parts of the country have squatting toilets, as you can see here, and sometimes you actually have to bring your own toilet paper, so definitely be careful. I fully hit my forehead at the top of the bathroom when I got up from my squat. Like, I did pee, it was successful, but then I was rewarded, or actually punished, with a big bonk on the head. And with my belly fully spicy brothed up, we are off to our next stop, the Stone Forest, or Shilin, which is probably one of the items on the agenda I was most excited for. I'm going to unfortunately admit that in my head, when I looked at that agenda for this trip, I mistakenly thought this stone forest were the mountains that inspired Avatar. Totally different part of China. I will see that one day. But anywho, Stone Forest is still beautiful and you get to experience it in 4K. So it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site that basically has these very dramatic limestone pillars that kind of rise up and look like trees that have been petrified. Hence the name Stone, quote unquote, Forest. So a very popular attraction here. It's definitely just for tourists if you see this happen. But basically you dress up in their ethnic regional clothing, similar to Asima. And Asima is basically a legend in the Yi ethnicity. And so for context, within Yunnan, something that's really special is they have over 20 unique different ethnicities and almost like local tribes, if you want to think about it. So they have different cultures, and that influences their food, their fashion, like you see here. But basically, going back to Asima, she was a beautiful young lady who didn't want to marry this powerful landlord's son. We're here for it. But basically, she had to go through this like rescue attempt by her true love, but then she was tragically swept away by a flood and then transformed into a stone. Her stone, which now sits in the Stone Forest, and I actually get a picture with her later on. But the photo shoot, guys, it was blazing hot, but I was having so much fun, and I kind of felt like I was on an episode of America's Next Top Model, which was one of my favorite shows growing up. I will not say that I'm particularly photogenic, but the photographer does a great job of basically directing you and forcing you into different poses. So I felt like a lot of fun, and if you look at the thumbnail, that is me. awesomeing it up with my jingly hat. Alright, I take my fancy schmancy outfit on, and then of course we've got to go through the actual stone forest. Oh. And now you've had a musical interlude. We are at another part of the stone forest. So the entire thing is over 135 square miles, aka it's huge. So there are respectively different areas that of course all have the limestone sculptures, but here is special because that is Asima, the story that I told you before. And it's only fun if you use your imagination, but at the top you can see her head with her hat, and she's kind of facing the side and looking defiantly up. And to really make it all theme park-like, of course, you have to end your day with an Asima ice cream. Vanilla, strawberry, or chocolate, you take your pick. And now that I'm a little bit more cooled down with my hat and my ice cream, just like a theme park, you gotta get your photos at the end of your ride. And man, they developed these so quickly because it had only been like 30 to 45 minutes before that I was actually doing my photo shoot. But as you can see, look at all the options and all the poses. Can't take any credit for the poses, like I said. The photographer, that was all her work. And then we are off to one of the coolest restaurants I have ever been to in my entire life. It was described to me as, this restaurant has a lot of succulents. And I was like, okay, love succulents, they're cute. But, oh boy, I have never seen so many succulents in my 27 years of being. This was not just like 100 succulents. This was thousands upon thousands of succulents from the moment that you enter the front door. And I will say all the restaurants in China are a lot more spacious than those of the US. Of course, there are smaller ones, hole-in-the-wall ones, but there are many restaurants like this that are almost entire compounds with hundreds of tables. And like I foreshadowed to you, this was Hot Pot Part 2. Did not expect that the Cactus restaurant would also be the Hot Pot restaurant. But this quickly became quite a feast because not only did we have hot pot, we had roast duck. And the duck is similar to that of Peking duck, but a little bit particular to the Yunnan region, a smaller duck, but that same juicy skin. And these potatoes were some of my favorite things that I've eaten this entire trip. So garlicky, so flavorful, and like right amount of potato starch inside. And the experience was all the more authentic because not only were we drinking some Chinese beers, we were also fully sitting on little kid stools, which is quite normal in China, so my butt was kind of numb by the end. And it wouldn't be a proper visit to Asia without stopping by a night market. So we headed back to the busy part of Kunming in the city, and you will see a lot of animals that I was not in store for. It was giving pet store meets outdoors, and yes, those are crickets, and they are just as loud as you would imagine. So I was initially intrigued, but then I will be honest, as I walk through the rows and rows of kittens and puppies and birds, hamsters, and more, like any pet, you name it, it was on the street. And they were stuck in their little cages. I felt really bad, and I wish that in some way I could save them. I assume the laws in China are a bit different than the US. You would not find something like this on the streets of America. And people were into it, but I did just feel pretty guilty the whole time, and like I just wanted to save all of them, and it made me miss my own dog at home. But okay, past the animal show at the entrance, it became more of a typical night market in the sense there are a mix of vendors, both selling items as well as food, of course. And then the streets were just lined with a bunch of different shops, open very, very late at night for whatever bite or sip that you were in the mood for. So my pick on the street was probably a bit of surprise, given that it was like 9, 10 p.m. at night. But also at the same time, I had jet lag and there was still a little bit more of the night to go. So actually in Yunnan, I did not know this, but their coffee is one of their specialties. And while I might not have tasted anything particularly unique compared to an iced latte that I get back home in New York City, I will say that it was very good and made for the perfect beverage to cool me down as we continued our walk through the night market. So it's almost 11 p.m. somehow, but before our final stop of the night, we do visit this street that is known for these beautiful lavender flowers. So it's right after they were at full bloom, but I did get to see a little bit of the night sky. But apparently people come and hoard the street and just take a bunch of photos in the spring. But okay, somehow we are in for our fourth meal of the day and my second dinner. And, we did hot pot, which is an iconic Chinese eat, and now we've got to do barbecue. And this was probably my favorite meal of the trip, not only for the food, but more so for the unforgettable experience. So as you can see, folks in this part of China love to go out to eat all the way up until 3 a.m., regardless if it's a weekday. And this is one of those spots. So you start by picking what you actually want to eat on the grill. And of course, if I'm in China, I've got to eat some bugs. And I will be so honest, I was already stuffed at this point. Like, I was definitely at unbuttoning my pants mode of fullness. But to be polite to the hosts that have been taking me around all day, I was like, yeah, I definitely can eat more, as I stared at them putting tofu on the grill and felt minorly queasy. But the night quickly turned up a notch because my mom actually swung by after her business meeting. So she was in that conference, like I mentioned, all day long, and apparently had only eaten like one bite of chicken. So she was starving, and she had come over, and it was perfect because then she was able to eat all the extra food on the grill that I could not really eat. But these skewers were delicious. I love that cumin seasoning that's on the lamb skewers and some of the grilled dishes. And then the highlight actually were these worms. They tasted like the best seasoned potato chips you'll ever had. Looked a little bit scary, but honestly, when they're in my mouth, they just felt like little crunchy snacks. So as I close out this chapter of Kunming, extremely full, but so satisfied to be living this dream of a trip, you'll have to stay tuned for our next stop in Yunnan, which is Dali.